Now, I've got to admit, I mean, I've been with my partner for just over 11 years now, but when I was single, when I was in my teens, I did this kind of stuff all the time. Now, I never did it, and then afterwards someone says, "Oh, you're actually a jerk. This is really sleazy. It's awful." I just did it to be honest. I was dead shy, so I used it in that context. And I ended up having lots of quite long relationships, really fantastic relationships, just because I kicked them off by using these techniques to be able to get through the barrier of just simply going up and talking to somebody. So that's a real bonus of Stephen Pelliari's course. Also, you get the cold reader material in there. But what I will say about this course, it really, really does come across as a bit showmanship. Because he's a Las Vegas style hypnotist, he's a stage hypnotist and mentalist. Not a very nice word, mentalist, but he's a mental illusionist, and he does a lot of mind control techniques. The kind of stuff that Derren Brown does, where there's not really anything psychic going on, but he gives the illusion that there is. So that's what he does. He teaches you how to do all those kind of things, and it's really, really worth a look in on that one. Primarily over anything else, simply because the patterns that he gives you will work in an everyday situation. Now, the other course that I want to talk about is Igor Ledachovsky's Conversational Hypnosis course. Wow, if you've not got this course already and you are serious about hypnosis, then this is a must-have. It is huge. It's incredible. When you first get this, it's amazingly overwhelming, and it is really, really intimidating. But I would say what you should do with this material, I mean, Stephen's course is much more aimed at the beginner. Igor's course will work for a beginner, but there's so much in-depth material that goes to quite an advanced level in there that it's very, very intimidating when you first start. I mean, even when you first download the material, there's so much stuff to get through. You just start to think, oh, I've opened up a whole kettle of worms here and I'm never going to get through it. But when you start getting into the material, that's really not what happens. The material is laid out sequentially, and it starts off very, very simple, and it builds up gradually. In fact, when I started doing my review, I've had Igor's course for years, and when I very first went through this material, I listened to the first couple of CDs and I just thought, well, this is rubbish, it's just too basic. And it wasn't until probably around about CD 4 that I started really getting something from it. But I mean, I've been a hypnotist for 20 years, so pretty much everything that was in the CDs I already knew anyway, so it just felt like it was too basic to begin with. But as you persist with it, it builds. And one of the things that Igor himself says, which I think is incredibly valuable, and this is a really good metaphor, when we're using conversational hypnosis, it's each of the patterns that he teaches you, and these are progressive throughout the CDs, is like layering on another piece of persuasion. Now, he talks about a normal conversation with hypnotic patterns laid into it as having like a pencil that you can snap. If you've just got a normal conversation, it's very easy for someone to resist what you're trying to get them to do, just as it's easy to snap a pencil. However, once you start laying in these hypnotic language patterns, that's like taking more pencils, and I mean, you only need to get to 4, 5 or 6 where it's really, really difficult to snap, and it's very, very powerful. And of course, when we're talking about the hypnosis here, the hypnosis becomes incredibly difficult for the other person to resist. So this is really, really valuable stuff. But if you take each one of these patterns by itself, they're not very effective at all. So when you go through Igor's stuff, what you should do, and I mean what Igor recommends himself, is he'll teach you one pattern, and then he'll get you to go out and have conversations with people throughout your normal day. He'll give you exercises to follow where you apply this specific pattern that you've learned into the conversation. So you've got these goals to do, and the reason that he does this is it becomes second nature. So you start being able to apply these without having to think about them. So once you've done that, you've got one pattern in there, it then introduces you to another pattern, and that gets layered on top. So your conversation is becoming more powerful. Now, over time, and this does take time, you're not just going to download this, go through it and be able to do it by the end of this evening. It's nothing like that. This is something that you will have to put the effort and the work into. But if you're really serious, this material you cannot get better than this. But over time, these things layer. And it gets to a point where your normal conversation includes these patterns so effectively that you really don't even have to think about it. All you've got to do is have your goal in mind, whatever you want the person to do, and then you go through the normal conversation, all the patterns are automatically included in that, and then you get the outcome that you desire. Now, unlike Steve Pelliari, Igor Ledachovsky, these are very strange names these hypnotists have. Igor, his background is a lawyer. He used to represent people in court, so obviously persuasive language patterns were incredibly important for his job, and he is right at the top of his field in training people how to negotiate. He got paid a huge amount of money for negotiations in the past, and now what he does is he teaches people how to take covert and conversational hypnotic techniques in order to be able to apply them in this field. So we can see here we've got Steve and Igor coming from completely different places. We've got Igor we've got Steve who this sounds a little bit negative, but he's kind of coming a little bit from the ego. It seems to be a bit more that his course is about how can I use hypnosis to get more things in my life and make myself look cool to other people, to impress people, maybe to get laid, and maybe to get other people to be to admire me. So that seems to be the angle that Steve's coming from. There's a lot more stuff in there, but generally that's the impression that you get. It comes from the ego. There's a lot of I want to make myself look good. How can I do that using hypnosis? That's Steve's course. Igor's course is entirely different. The angle that Igor's coming from is totally different. Primarily, it's about win-win situations. How you can have a conversation with somebody where you and the other person can come out better off than how you were before. Now with Igor's material specifically, he talks about things like maybe you're in a business and you've got a couple of employees and one of the employees isn't doing too well and you want to have a chat with them and you've really got to reprimand them, but you want to do it in a way that's going to cause them to be able to get over their problems, work better and feel good about themselves. Now to me, this is the real power of conversational hypnosis, because if you can do that, if you've got to reprimand someone, but you can do it in such a way that causes them to feel good, corrects the problem and gets them to work better, then I mean that is the absolute optimum state of communication. That is your goal in life, is to be able to make win-win situations in any circumstance. So you can apply those kind of techniques in a lot of different situations. For example, I mean one of the things that I do with conversational hypnosis quite regularly is I'll use it on my own clients. When they come to see me and they're telling me about their situation, their problem, before we even start talking about hypnosis or anything like that, just during the little chat over a cup of tea at the beginning of the session, I bombard them with conversational hypnotic techniques so that they will believe that the therapy is going to be successful, they'll actually want to make the change and they'll really, really be looking forward to it. So it totally changes their state of mind. So that's a win-win situation because they end up getting a lot more out of it, it works better for them, it makes my job a hell of a lot easier when we actually go into the hypnotherapy session itself. I also use it in normal everyday situations like getting people to remember things that I don't want them to forget, or getting people to forget stuff that I don't want them to remember. Another thing is getting my niece and nephew to do their homework, to go to bed on time if I'm looking after them, to get people to want to do stuff that's good for them. Now years ago when I had a normal corporate life, back in 2003, that's the last time I sort of worked outside of the hypnotic field, but back then I was still a hypnotist. I became a hypnotist in '92, so I was still using hypnotic techniques, but I used them alongside of my conventional job. Back then I was working for a company called Essential Mortgages, and this is their newsletter. The reason I took that job was to test out covert hypnosis, so this is something I've been using for quite a while. Right here, these are awards. I got stacks of these about being the top associate of the month throughout the time I was working with Essential Mortgages. I only actually worked there for about 6 months, and the first 3 or 4 months of that I had to do legal qualifications exams to do with the financial services industry so I could go out and talk to people about insurance and mortgages. When I went for the job, I was very open about it. I told the guy, the boss, the reason I come for this job is because I am a hypnotist. I'm experimenting with conversational hypnosis techniques and I want to see if I can sell insurance with them. I tell you saw the ching in his eyes. His eyes just lit up, and it was, I mean, the interview was pretty much over there and then, and it was about basically a case of when can you start? Because he wasn't a fool. He knew that if I can sell insurance, he's going to get huge commissions out of anything that I do. So once I'd finished my exams, which here, this is when I used to wear glasses. That little picture there is the day that I completed my CMAP qualification so that I could go out and unleash myself on the public. That week I went out and saw some clients, and this is unheard of in this industry. Every client that I saw, I sold £5,000 accident, sickness and unemployment policies. This is term life assurance as well. And once I'd done this,